Hashem, today's daf yomi is Zevachim daf Peiches Zevachim 88. In today's daf yomi, we're going to start at the Mishnah on Peiches Amid Aleph. The Mishnah says, let's say you have a kli halach. Let's say, and these are the utensils that are holding the liquid that was used in the temple, either the blood, the oil, or the wine. So that's called a kli halach. Then mekachin es halach, that if you put something that's liquid into it, it will sanctify it. Umidos yavesh, and if you have the measuring utensils that measure dry things, mekachos es yavesh, then they will sanctify the dry items. Rashi says there are really only two measuring utensils in the temple. Shtei midos shel yavesh. There are only two measuring utensils for dryness in the temple. There is an isaron for the flour, and a chatzi isaron, and a half of isaron. Isaron to measure the korban mincha, and a half isaron because you need to do a half of mincha every day for the kohen gadol, half in the morning and half in the night. So therefore, with respect to the midos, the dry utensils don't have any specific utensils except for these measuring utensils, because the vessel that they put the mincha in is also a vessel for moisture. It's the bowls and the basins, and so therefore for the measuring thing, they're only for the dry, and so therefore that's what will sanctify it. But for the moist utensils, you put items into the kli halach because that's what holds them, and so therefore that's the distinction. In kli halach, the moist utensils are not going to be mekadesh es yavesh. They don't sanctify if something dry was put into it. Lo yavesh mekadesh es halach, and the dry measuring utensils do not measure the moisture. Kli hakodesh shenikvu. Let's say you have a sacred utensil that got a hole in it. Im osin bahen me'ein malach. And if you could still do the same work with it, shayu osin, and it used to do vehin shleimim, and they are complete. Meaning to say, when they are complete, they can still do the same work when they're whole, even though they have a dent in it. Mikach, and then it continues. Excuse me. Then it continues to be mikadesh. The items that are put on it. Otherwise, a mikachin. Mikulan a mikachin el b'kodesh, and all of these things are only mikadesh if they are in the sanctuary, in the courtyard. Amar Shmuel lo shanu el amidos. Shmuel says, when do we say this idea that the kli halach is not mekadesh the yavesh? When do we say that the utensil for moisture is not going to be mekadesh the dry items? That's only when they placed in the midos, in the measuring utensils of the liquid. There are 7 measuring utensils that they used to have. And so since these are not at all appropriate for anything dry to go in, and they were only sanctified to be measuring utensils, therefore, they only are mekadesh medida. So if you put in a dry item in there, it's not going to be sanctified. Avom mizrakos, mekachin. But if you put it into the basin, into a utensil for lach, then it will be mekadesh the dry items. Shenemar shnehem leihim soas, because it says in the pasuk that the basins used to hold the flour, so it's meant to hold dry items, and so therefore, even if a dry item went in the basin, even though it's a kli halach, it will be sanctified. So Amar Rav Achim Difto Ravina, what are you talking about? The mincha is lachahi. When it holds the soas, it's a korban mincha that has oil in it, so it's moist, and so that's why it's sanctified. But if it was truly dry, it wouldn't be sanctified. Amar Welo, no, no, this pasuk is telling us that even that part of the mincha that went in there, it still had dry items in it. There were certain parts of it that were not fully absorbed, and the basin would still sanctify them. Or alternatively, mincha agabe dam ki yavesh dami. Or alternatively, the mincha vis-a-vis the blood is going to be considered like it is dry, and so therefore we can learn from here to the other dry items that they're also sanctified if they went into the basin. Amar Shmuel, Kli Shares Emikachin Ela Shleiman. This sacred utensils, they only sanctify something that went in there if they're the full shear. And Emikachin Ela Shleiman means say if the item is not broken, doesn't have a hole in it when it goes in. And Emikachin Ella Malay, and only if the items are full, it's the full shear. And Emakajin Ella Mitochen, they're only sanctified if the item is in it. We'll see what this is excluding. Amila and others had this version saying Emakajin Ella Shleiman, Umalayim, Umi Mifnim, and inside the courtyard of the temple. My benai, what's the difference between the two approaches? The first approach says it only sanctifies those things that are in it. What's that adding on? My binayu, the ika binayu beirutse midos. The basically the top of the cup. If you keep adding to it, it can be somewhat higher than the lip. So according to the first version, that is not sanctified. According to the second version, that it would be sanctified. B'masnisa tana, a different price. It's taught emikachin ela shleimin umalayim. Umitochen ubifnim. It has all the four things that Shmuel cited. Amar Ba'athi, Amar Yochanan, Moshanu el shein daito lahosif. When do we say that it only sanctifies if the item is a full shear in the utensil? That's only where he doesn't intend to add on to it. Avol daito lahosif. But if he put in only a portion of the amount, but he's intending to add on to it, then we're going to say Rishon Kodesh, that then we're going to say under those circumstances that each drop that he puts in is sanctified because he's intending to fill it up. And indeed, Tanya Nami Hachi, indeed, learned in the Brisa Mulayim, it says in the Pasuk that, and this is the reading for Hanukkah, that it has to be, the utensils need to be filled. Emulayim el Shleimim. And we learned that what does it mean, Mulayim? That only if they're it says that when they are complete, meaning it doesn't need to say that they need to be complete until their lips. El shleimim, that means to say they have the right amount. And Amar Rabbi Yosef, that's only when they don't intend to add. They intend to add to it Rishon culture, that each drop sanctifies it. So Amar Ein Kli Alach Mekadesh, the moist utensil does not sanctify a dry item that went in it. Hold on. A moist utensil does not sanctify a dry item that went in it. Amara v'temer avasi emikachin likarev. When we say that the moist utensil does not sanctify the dry item that went in it, doesn't sanctify it to bring it up on the altar. It's not holy enough to be brought up on the altar. Aval mikachin lipasal, but it's still sanctified that if there's a disqualifying action done on it, which would not disqualify it if it was chulin, but would disqualify it if it was kodesh, then we're going to say it's at that point it can become disqualified. And he could demasni laha. Some learned the statement of Rav or Ravasi on the following teaching. Ein meviim menachos u'nesachem ein meviim menachos u'nesachem u'minchas behema u'bikurim min hameduma. They know how to bring these grain offerings or the bikurim from meduma. Meduma is something that's partially truma and partially chulin. It was mixed together, so you can't bring the menachos and nesachem from that. Even though the Kohanim are allowed to do it, nevertheless, Rashi says we need something that's permitted for all of Israel because it says Mimashka Yisrael, Minam Mutar Yisrael. So therefore, you can't bring that as from the Meduma. You can't bring it from the Arlo and the Koya Karam. And if you brought that Lo Kiddush, it's not sanctified. And about that it says Amaravi Timur Vasi Lo Kiddush Likari Lo Kiddush Lipasul. It's not brought to become. It's not sanctified that you're able to bring it, but it is that you're able to be disqualified. We're on the bottom of 88A, around 7 lines from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan, Kli Kodesh Shenikvu, which we said that it becomes disqualified if it has a hole in it. Ein Matichin Osan. We basically can't fix it. I guess they would soften it and then spread it out to close it up. And we're going to see why at the end of these next 15 lines, the Gemara gives the reason. And the basic reason is the Talmud, the temple is a place of wealth, of beauty. And so therefore, we have a concept, don't bring your poverty into a place of wealth. Don't bring your frugality, like fixing these bowls, like rewashing your Tupperware, when really what you should be doing is making it as beautiful as possible. We don't fix it. We don't like patch it up with lead. Nifkamu, if it got dented, we don't fix the dent. Stock if there was a knife that became nicked, we don't sharpen out and get rid of the nick. Nishmatov, the blade fell off, so we don't bring it back. We don't make repairs on these small items. Abba Shaul says there was once a knife that was causing all sorts of problems in the temple because it had a nick in it and was making the animals not kosher. And the Kohanim said, let's get rid of it. They took a vote and they said, bury it. Well, so that maybe established a precedent. Big day kahuna ain't osin otam maase mechet el maase or you don't make the garments of the Kohanim from sewing them together, meaning you don't take different pieces of clothing and then sew them together to make the garments. El maase oreg, it should be one garment that's woven together, as it says, shenemer masa oreg, a garment of weaving. Nitgalu, if it became dirty, and you don't wash it. These are different types of detergents. A little bit mayim and not with water. A little bit mayim mechabsin. So the Gemara says, you mean with water? You could wash it. You can't wash it with detergent, but you could wash it with water. So if you want to say the problem is that it's going to look like it's poverty, what's the difference if it's detergent or water? It became dirty and you washed it. For sure, if you're not going to clean it, it's going to be worse. So the Gemara says, if it got dirty with something that could easily be cleaned with water, you got something that could easily be cleaned with water, then you could even use a detergent on the top of 88b. If it became dirty with the detergent, and then you can't even use water, but basically you have to bury it. And some say you're never allowed to wash it, can never wash it, because of this principle that we established at the beginning. There's no poverty in the place of wealth. So if your garments got dirty, the Kohen garments had to be not used anymore. So a couple of things here. First of all, we have to bear in mind, what do you mean the Kohen can't wash his clothing? The Kohanim mostly served like 2 days a year in the temple. And they wanted them coming in with new clothing, not like everybody passing along their old uniforms from the previous year. Number two, there is this concept of Einaniyas b'makom ashiris, but there's another concept which is almost the opposite of it, which is Torah chasa al mamonam shel Yisrael, that the Torah has compassion on the money of the Jewish people, and therefore it does not want us to spend beyond what we should be spending. So this matter even relates to matters as it relates to the temple. And so therefore, there's no specific, the Tiferes Yisrael writes, there's no specific rule why one applies, why they sometimes do one and not the other. Why sometimes we say Einaniyas b'makom ashiris, and sometimes we say no, it's a waste of money, the Torah wants to protect our money. So we just have to know that sometimes we should be tight, but sometimes we should be saying there's no aniyas in a place of ashiris, and when it comes to God, we spend it all. So now, Gemara is going to go into Agadata, which is rare for this tractate. There is Agadata, but not as much as some other tractates. Gemara is going to tell us some Agadata about the garments of the Kohanim. So the every Kohen had 4 garments, but the Kohen Gadol wore 8 garments. The 4 garments of every Kohen were he wore the avnate, the me'il, the ketonet, and the avnate, the ketonet, the mechmasayim, and the mitznefet. He wore a belt, a tunic. He wore a pants underneath, and he wore a turban or a hat. The Kohen Gadol had on top of that, he had an ephod, he had a tzitz, he had a me'il, and a choshen. The Kohen Gadol had 4 extra garments. So Tanna Rabbanan in the me'il, this garment, this me'il that was worn, the Kohen Gadol, kul shel tchelos. It was entirely made out of tchelos, out of this Rashi says it was like bluish green, made from the blood of a snail. So the me'il was entirely from the from tcheles. And how do we know this? Shenemar vayatas me'il ha'efod kalil tcheles. So he made the me'il ha'efod, and it was entirely tcheles. Masa oreg kalil tcheles. So shulav, the hems, ketzad. What did the hems look like? How did they do the hems? So maybe tcheles v'argamam toashani. So they put 3 threads, the tcheles, the purple, and the crimson, and shizur, and he twisted them together to make 1 thread. But also to kamin rimonim, so pitkupian, and it made them into like these woven pomegranates and are not yet blossomed. Ukamin konos shel konosos shabarosh tinokos, and they look like these conical hats that the children used to wear. These, like, the word konos means cones actually. Or maybe shivim v'shnayim zagin, and then they would bring 72 bells. So in addition to the pomegranates, which will be woven onto the bottom of the me'il, there are also 72 bells interspersed. Shebayan shivim v'shnayim imbalin, that they had 72 inbal. The hotel in Israel, the inbal hotel, this is the word, and it's the clapper inside the bell, or also in modern Hebrew, the Adam's apple. And he put 36 on one side and 36 on the other. So whenever the Kohen Gadol walked, people could hear him. Rabbi Dosa Omer Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Shloshim Shisha Hayu knows a total of 36. 18 on one side, 18 on the other. Amar Rabbi Inyani. Hold on 1 second. Somebody asked me what time davening was, and I told them the wrong time. So Rabbi Dosa Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Shloshim Shisha Shmonasri Tzadeh Shmonasri Tzadeh. Amar Rabbi Inyani Bar Sason Kimachokes Kan. Just like there's a dispute here by the Me'il, Kach Machokes b'Maros Negayim. It's the same dispute by Maros Negayim. These are the afflictions one gets for tzaras. How many types of afflictions are there? The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah in Negayim. Maros Negayim, Rabbi Dosa ben Harkinis Omer Lamed Vav. He says there were 36. And Maccabi ben Ma'al says Shivim Mishnayim. It's the same debate whether there were 36 or 72. Once we cited Rabbi Inyani Bar Sason, we go into more of what he taught. He says, Amar Rabbi Inyani Bar Sason, Lama Nisbacha Parshas Karbanos Parshas Bigdei Kahuna. Why is the passage of the Kohanos related right next to the passage of the priestly garments? And here we're talking about that in Parshas Tzav, it says about the karbanos, and then right after that, it talks about the inauguration ceremony where Moshe dressed Aaron in the garments, and so therefore we see the passage of the priestly garments is next to the passage of the karbanos. Why are they next to each other? So to tell you ma karbanos mechaprin, it's to tell you just like. Hold on 1 second. It's to tell you just like karbanos are going to serve as an atonement. Also, the priestly garments serve as an atonement. And the Gemara is going to go through what each of them atone for. Ketones mechaperes al shvichas damim. The tunic that the Kohen wore, which is like basically a long shirt, basically. So this ketones was atoning for spilled blood, for murder. And actually, the pasuk they cite is from our parsha this week. It says Vayishcha 2 series. The brothers of Joseph slaughtered a goat. Vayitbeluas hakutones bedam, and they took Joseph's tunic pasim. They took his tunic, and they dipped it in the blood. They didn't actually kill him, but because they dipped it in the blood, Rashi says, Remes hu ha'atid, this was a hint to the future, she'echaper shfichas damim b'kutonet. Shvila hainu kapar, that shfichas damim will be atoned for by the ketonet. The immersing is a hint to atoning. I mean, that is a difficult limud to my mind, because the actions they were doing were sinful, and yet we're saying that ultimately that's going to be the atonement. So you have to work a little to see how you get from one to the other. Marsha writes a different explanation, that the ketonet is the garment that's closest to the body, and therefore it gets the most dirty with blood when a person is killed. And therefore, the ketonet of the Big Day Kahuna is an atonement for murder. Okay. Well, that's intuitive. The pants atone for sexual sins because it says that Moshe made for them pants to cover up their erva. Mitznefes, the turban mechaperes agas eruch. That the turban atones for arrogance. How do we know that? Minayin Amar Rabbi Chanina Yavo Davar Shebegova Vichaper Al Gova. When something which is high atone for a high attitude. Avne mechaper al hirar alev. A belt atones for improper thoughts. Rashi says because they wore the belt, not like we wear around our hips, but they used to wear the belt. The Kohen had to wear the belt under, basically around his underarms, under his arms, up on opposite the heart. Hecha de Isa, because that's where the belt is. It's next to the heart. Choshen, the breastplate, the judgment plate, mechaper al adinin, that atones for corrupt laws or improper rulings. Shnemer vasisa choshen mishpa. The ephod is an apron, and Rashi writes in the Torah, he says, I don't know what it is, but I think it is. One time he saw a noblewoman riding a horse, and he said to his students, oh, that's what the apron looks like, the garment she wore when she's riding a horse. So the ephod atones for idolatry, because it says, ein ephod utrafin. It says in the pasuk, now the pasuk is from Moshe, but it says, there will come a time where there's no ephod, utrafim, meaning to say, when the ephod is not there, all of a sudden you'll see all the trafim, the idols. Mi'io mechaper lashon hara. The mi'io atones for lashon hara, for the sin of gossip. And how do we know this? Because the me'il makes a lot of noise. So let something that makes a lot of noise atone for the bad sounds of lashon hara. V'tzitz mechaper al azus panim. V'tzitz, the gold foreplate of the Kohen Gadol, that atones for azus panim, is like impudence or like chutzpah, improper disrespect. And how do we know that? Because it says, v'tzitz ksiv vayal metzach Aaron. And it says it was on the forehead of Aaron. U'ba'azus panim, when it comes to this like chutzpah, it says metzach isha zonah. It says that Jeremiah says that you had the meitzach of an isha zona, meaning to say that you had this meitzach can mean the word impudent. Is it really the case that lashon hara atones for Is this really the case that Lashon Hara atones for this, and the Ketones, the Mio atones for Lashon Hara, and Ketones is atoning for the Egla for murder? Is that really the case? Amar Bishul and Levi, Shnei Dvarim, Lomatzino and Kapara Bekarbanos. There are two things that the Karbanos, we don't see an atonement for them. Meaning to say there are two things that the Karbanos do not atone for. Hold on one second. Matzino, even though we don't find atonement for them in the Karbanos, nevertheless, we find atonement for Matzino and Kapar min Makom Achar. What are these two things? Me'ele and Shvichos Dam Lashon Hara. Murder and Lashon Hara. There's no atonement in the Karbanos, and we find an atonement for them from the following places. Shvichos Dam Me'egla Rufa, from the ritual of murder, is atoned for by the ritual of the decapitated calf. And Lashon Hara is not decapitated, but like an axe to the back of the neck. And Lashon Hara is atoned for from the Ketoras. So it's not atoned for by the Kohen's Ketones, or, it's atoned for by the Agla Rufa and the Ketoras. The Tani Rebbe Chananya Minayel Ketoras Shemechaperes. How do we know that the Ketoras atones? Because by Yitain it's a Ketoras Vechaper La'am. This refers to when Aaron stopped the plague by after Korach. The time Beirishma Mak Ketoras Mechaperes. What is a Ketoras atone for? A Lashon Hara. You have a verse it atones to the sin of Lashon Hara. It's something that is done secretly, because when the Ketoras is brought, there's nobody in the sanctuary with the Kohen who brings it. And it'll atone for the secret sin of Lashon Hara. So the Gemara says, Kasha Lashon Hara, Kasha Shvichos Dam, Shvichos Dam. So we have a contradiction about Lashon Hara. Is it the Me'il or is it the Ketoras? We have a contradiction about murder. Is it the Ketonas that atones, or is it the Egla Rufa? So the Gemara says, Shvichos Dam Mokasha. Let's deal with the case of murder. It's not a question that one is the Egla Rufa and one is the Ketones. Mokasha, Hadi Yediya Man Katlei, and Hadi Lo Yediya Man Katlei. One is where you know who killed him, then the Ketones is the one that atones, and one is where you don't know who killed him, then it's the Egla Rufa. The Gemara says, Hadi Yediya Man Katlei, Bar Katoah. So if you know who killed him, then what do you mean the ketonis is an atonement? You have to execute the person. That's the atonement. Where it says no, because b'meizid v'lo asher he killed intentionally. There was no hasra, there was no warning, and so therefore he can't be executed. So then the ketonis will atone. Lashon hara nami lo kasha habetzina befarasya. So lashon hara in public, if somebody spoke lashon hara in public, the Mio atones for it, and if he does it in private, then we say that the Ketoras atones. But we see from here, Lashon Hara can be in public. It's not a private. It's not only you talk something behind his back. You could say Lashon Hara in public, and you need an atonement. So Lashon Hara in public is obviously a tremendous sin. Hajjanalach Hamizbeach Mekadesh. And the next chapter is chapter 10, is a totally different topic. And that's today's daf. Baruch Hashem.